Well, on the 19th of February, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will table the highly anticipated national budget speech. As usual, National Treasury is faced with the difficulty of trying to secure more revenue for government's growth and social priorities, while at the same time trying to reduce the country's debt levels. It's long been said that what the economy needs is a good dose of economic growth to improve the lot of the fiscus, but that has been elusive. So, with limited space to manoeuvre, what can we expect? Well, for more, I'm joined by Johann Els. He is the chief economist at Old Mutual. Thank you very much, Johann, for joining us. So, what room, if any, do you think the finance minister has to levy higher taxes this year?
Unfortunately, that is a risk. I hope he doesn't do that, but I think given that the economy is probably going to perform a little bit better this year than what we've seen in recent years, that Treasury, the minister, might actually think they've got some room. We are overtaxed, so I think the focus should rather be on the expenditure side and not taxing us more. In terms of your comment, better growth, that will certainly help getting the budget under more control, because I think this year we can perhaps get better growth. We've got less structural constraints. Some of Transnet's volumes are busy picking up. Some of the electricity constraints have eased. And then we've got the cyclical environment beneficial as well. That's lower interest rates and lower inflation. So perhaps better growth this year will help the minister and perhaps prevent tax increases.
Yeah, but what about the usual suspects, you know, the sin taxes and even maybe the fuel levy, which has remained flat for a number of years? Don't you think they might want to tap on that?
Absolutely think they're going to. The sin taxes, of course, those of us who smoke, who drink, that certainly will be taxed. And I think you're right in terms of the fuel levy. That's been constant for a number of years. So I think that will be. I just hope that that remains where he tries to find more money and not raise income taxes.
So we're hearing that some sectors of the public sector workers are keen or have already accepted government's wage offer of an increase of 5.5%, but the main bloc, that is the COSATU bloc, has yet to come to the party. Of course, the National Treasury had wanted this done and dusted before the tabling of the budget. But either way, what sort of implications does this have for the fiscus, given that it's more than what the government had provided for?
Absolutely. That's unfortunate because it's a high increase compared to where inflation sits. It's higher than what government has targeted, as you said. In October, they set an increase in the total wage bill of 4.8%. Now, with this 5.5% increase, probably there'll be some savings in terms of the scheme for early retirement. So I think at least 4 to 5 billion rand extra this year. So again, pressure on expenditure. So that is unfortunate. So in an era when we have to cut expenditure, there's actually lots of expenditure pressures.
Now, over the last months, when you've analysed government revenue versus expenditure and the extent to which National Treasury has been going out to market for debt funding, what are your expectations around the Finance Minister's ability to communicate to us that he's managed to hold the line in terms of the good old term fiscal consolidation?
I think actually they've done a pretty good job over the last few years in terms of fiscal consolidation, keeping expenditure under fairly tight control, despite all the extra pressures that they've had from Eskom's side, etc. Last year, well, the specific fiscal year that we're still in, that only ends at the end of March 2025, I think the same will be told. I think expenditure is slightly under budget even, so good control of expenditure. For me, the risk is in the new budget that's going to target the new fiscal year from 1 April onwards, where there's probably pressures on more support for Eskom, support for Transnet. And of course, we know that municipalities have got huge debts, again, to Eskom and others, so there might have to be support for all of those. I'm hoping that they toe the line and not provide too much support there, because that'll lift the budget deficit, that will lift the debt ratio, and of course that's what ratings agencies and investors do not like.
Yeah. One last question. Of course, in light of recent events with the United States deciding to pull funding from South Africa, which was very helpful in terms of our health expenditure on things like HIV and AIDS medication, that potentially is a gap of about 8.5 billion rand. But You know, it has been said that there may be exceptions to this. It's not clear because this is still a fluid situation. But assuming that we have to find 8.5 billion rand for this gap, where do you think government might likely find it from?
Oh, that is an unfortunate event, and as you say, that it's unclear. But if they have to find 8 to 9 billion, unfortunately, I think that's going to lift the deficit. In other words, government's probably going to borrow a large part of that in the markets. Higher deficit means higher debt ratio. All of that means higher interest rates, or upward pressure at least on interest rates, and so government's interest bill comes under more pressure. So all of this is negative for the budget and for us as taxpayers, because some of that might have to come from tax revenue.
Tricky space. Thank you so much, Johann, for your insights. As always, Johann Els is the Chief Economist at Old Mutual.